Hi. So today I'd like to talk about the concept of sales as a pendulum rather than sales as a rock that you push. So I feel that a lot of people are taught from a young age that selling a customer is kind of like moving a rock to the other side of the street or the other side of the room. You take this big boulder and you push and you push and you push, and some are going to be easy to push, but some are going to be heavier, so you're going to have to push more. And you push as hard as you can. And eventually you'll get the boulder to the other side, and once you get it to the other side, you're done. You've made the sale. So you got to put in all this work, and the more heavy or the more resistant the rock is to being moved, the harder that you have to push to get to the other side. And we're all used to this hard sales technique. You see it if you go into a car dealership. You have somebody sitting or standing there that looks like they're just miserable. They hate life. They're not happy. The second you walk in, that big fake smile comes on, that high-pitched fake happy voice comes on, and they walk up to you and say, "Hi, I'm James. How are you today?" And they pretend that they're your best friend when they couldn't give two shits of a fuck about you, but they pretend that they're your best friend, and then they start going on about they don't even care what it is you want, what it is you're there for. They're like, "This car that you're looking at, it has the best gas mileage, and it just won the safety award. Is the safest mid-size sedan that's selling for under $20,000. This is the best deal you're gonna get on this. We want this car. You deserve this car. We can get you into this car today." And it's so transparent that this is a manipulative relationship. He is pretending to like you. He is pretending to be friendly because he wants a commission. Further, he is discussing all the positives of this car because the car often does not sell itself. You can probably find a better car. You may find a better deal somewhere else. It may not be the safest. It may not have the best gas mileage or be the best price. So what happens in the head of the consumer is you keep trying to push them towards one side, but since consumer decision-making works on a pendulum, the more you try to push them over to the right, which is the sale, as soon as you stop talking, as soon as you let go, the quicker it will go over to the left, which is going to be them walking out of the dealership and saying, I don't really want this, because it's always based on a pendulum. And I didn't really understand this until my early to mid-20s. I was never really one for hard sales. I didn't like it. I hated the feeling of walking up to people and knowing that they were going to be like, "Oh God, a salesperson." So I would always try to do the exact opposite, just because I didn't want to feel that disdain, that hatred, that burden of making somebody feel uncomfortable when they didn't want to be made to feel uncomfortable by a dishonest interaction. So I would always try to do the opposite. And I want to try to give an example of this. So I'm going to try and give a couple of examples of this to see if, let's see if they make any sense. So I remember having a customer come in a number of years ago, and I had mentioned this in a video that I had done a long time ago. And it was somebody that needed some repair. It was some $100 or $150 repair. Something was dead and not working. And from our conversation, I realized that it was about a 40-minute to 1-hour train ride out of the way to get here. And they're talking, and we're talking, and she's making it obvious that there's something going on her phone, and it's really bothering her and pissing her off. It's one of these things where I believe it was one of these things where they had like a 2010 iPhone, but they did put the 2014 iOS update on it. And as you know, you can't roll back updates with iOS. Well, what you get is what you're stuck with, and it gets consecutively slower with each version, especially if you're using older hardware, to the point where you just want to pull your hair out and throw the phone out the window and buy another one. In which case, Apple wins. But that's subject for another video. So it was very obvious because you would touch something and go, just wait a second. She would touch, and then she would tap the phone again in the same spot, and then her face would just get more and more agitated and irritated, and then she would slam the phone on the table. It worked really, really badly. And during the course of our conversation, it became kind of obvious that she didn't really want to spend the money on it. So rather than start going, "Oh, but we're certified, but yeah, we have the best price. This is going to be done faster than anywhere else. We have good reviews," and all that, chest pounding of how great we are, which is the hard sell as to you need this, you want this, blah, blah, blah. What I did is I said, "Yeah, honestly, you probably don't. You don't really need to get this fixed to do what you want to do. I wouldn't really spend the money on it." And after that, I said, "Have you used a LinkedIn app on your phone?" Because during the course of our conversation, it was obvious that the reason that she wanted to get this fixed is because she was using it to find a new job. And one way that you can find a new job is using LinkedIn. And also, if you need to do resumes, I was talking about how they have applications that allow you to edit Word documents directly on an iPhone. And I had also said that most of the of the correspondence you're going to do is via email, which can easily be done by phone. So I had said, I don't really think there's much reason to fix this. You don't really have to. I wouldn't spend the money on it. And she's about to walk out. She already had kind of said, I don't really want to fix it. I confirmed with her, probably not the greatest thing to do. And as she was about to walk out the door, I said, do you have the LinkedIn app on your phone? And she stops. She's like, why? And I go, well, you can use the LinkedIn app to look for work. You can use the LinkedIn app to promote yourself. You can also edit your resume directly from your phone, so you don't really need the machine. And all the correspondence you're going to do is via email. You can do that via the phone anyway, so it doesn't really matter much. And as soon as I said that, she runs over to the check-in machine and goes, okay, I'll fix it. And she puts in her information. So there were two things that went on there. The first thing that went on was the swinging of the pendulum. As I said, anytime somebody is trying to hard sell you, it brings up this natural, humane skepticism as to whether or not there's any value in what you're selling. Because if you had value, you wouldn't need to spend time trying to sell someone. So what I do is I do the exact opposite. I just say, you probably don't really need this. Nah, there's probably not much we can do for you. Nah, you don't really need this product or service. The second thing that we do is we look for the pain point. The pain point here was the fact that I realized that she really, really hated using her phone. She despised using her phone. So what I do is I don't take my vision and put it into her head, because that's just wrong. What you need to do is give the customer the tools to build the vision in their own mind as to why they want whatever it is you're selling. And knowing that she had made a 40-minute to 1 hour train ride in a fairly crappy train at the time here, I know that there is some reason that this individual decided to come here. So there is a reason in their mind. I just need to remind them of what that reason is. And here it's, do you have the LinkedIn app on your phone? I know that this person doesn't have another machine. I know that they are trying to use their phone for this. And I can tell, without her having to say a word to me, that she despises having to use her terribly slow, bloated, garbage phone. And what that does is that builds vision in her head. At the point that I said that, she's thinking about just how long it's going to take from the time that she clicks the Office app to the time that it actually opens the document. She's thinking about hitting backspace to correct a typo once and it hitting 3 times because it's lagging, and how irritated and angry that's going to make her. And with that, she's building all the vision in her head that she needs to understand that it's probably just best off if she just gave me $100. And that is what wound up happening. In the hard sales environment, you're constantly trying to push a boulder. But in reality, you're actually pushing a pendulum. And the more you push towards the sale, the more the natural human skepticism of, well, if you had value, would you really need to do this in the first place? The more that's going to push the pendulum towards not getting the sale. It's going to swing in the other direction. However, if you push the pendulum towards, you don't need this, don't buy this, think twice before you buy this, it removes a lot of that skepticism and then puts the customer into a safer state of mind, where then you can then start allowing them to build vision as to why it is they want this or why it is they need this. It gets them out of that paranoid, that do you really have anything to offer mindset. And then, since this is a pendulum, once you push them towards, do you really need this, it naturally swings back in the other direction towards, hey, well, I did make a trip here, and I do need this, and they are selling this, and it seems like a decent product, so I might as well buy it. And that is what we're aiming for. Another example of this from the studio days, right after I had quit Avatar Studios and I was doing freelance work on the side in addition to working at one of the first studios that I had interned at. I remember showing up at this place. They had a Neve VRP console. I'm not sure how familiar any of you listening are with classic recording gear, but the Neve VRP was probably the worst thing ever released that had the Neve name on it. Neve had sold their name, I believe, to Siemens sometimes in the 80s, the company that makes refrigerators, that now wanted to pretend that they knew how to make recording consoles. And one thing that went wrong with a lot of them were the switches. So the switches on them would screw up, and you would see this at a lot of studios. They would put toothpicks in the switches if they were the smarter studios. The dumber studios would then put put safety pins in the switches, which would obviously be bad because they're made of metal. But they would have these toothpicks, and eventually you would have so many toothpicks that there'd be more toothpicks than working switches. So what I would do is I would go to the studio and they would give me a list of everything that's broken. I would give them a rate of per hour, and I would say this is approximately the amount of time I think it's going to take plus parts, but this is just an approximate. And one place had me go over. They said we don't really have a lot of money right now, and they also only wanted me to go to fix the switches. So I explained. I said, honestly, this doesn't functionally affect anything. Your main client, you said you don't have a lot of money. The main client is going to be the artist or the record label, and they're the ones that are going to say whether or not they had an amazing experience here, and they're not going to notice the toothpicks in the console. The engineer will. The engineer's not going to care. They're just going to appreciate that this is one of the last places left in New York that even has an Eve console to begin with, and it's not going to affect whether or not somebody books here. Like, you have a good location, you have good instruments, you have amazing acoustics, you have a great vibe, you have good availability, you have a good instrument selection. Like, that's why people are going to come here. Nobody is going to say, you have this great amazing studio with this great rate and this great place and this great acoustics and this amazing console, but I see a toothpick in the bus jar. Oh yeah, screw that. We're not recording there. So honestly, I appreciate that you want to fix everything, but if you don't have a lot of money right now, I would just wait a few months until you have other stuff that's broken that functionally keeps you from working, then call me in, and then have me do all that stuff, and then do the switches on the side. And they're like, okay, we understand. Yeah, so yeah, we'd like to pay you for a full day to do this anyway. I'm like, what? Because you started the conversation by saying that you don't have the money to pay for this. I'm telling you why it doesn't matter whether or not you pay for this now. I'm telling you to delay it until later, when you probably pay me almost the exact same rate to fix this, plus everything else that's going to go wrong later. And what do? But say, oh yeah, we'll just pay. And I didn't understand what was going on. I didn't understand what I was doing. It was just this weird moment for me. This was before I read this book called Jim Camp's Start With No. It's a great book. This book discusses the idea of sales as a pendulum and the pain point in customers in detail, and I would highly suggest anybody listening to this go out and buy Jim Camp's Start With No, even if you're not a salesperson. This is just a great book for just getting in touch with yourself and good for self-knowledge. But it wasn't until I read that book that I realized that what I was doing all along was actually sales. Because I did not like being a salesperson, because I wanted to be perceived as honest, because I did not want to be perceived as somebody that's after the quick buck, that was actually making me a much better salesperson than the hard seller. Because what the hard seller thought they were doing was moving a boulder. So they just thought, if I keep pushing harder, that I'm going to get closer to my goal. But since I had been subconsciously looking at it like a pendulum, which is, the more I push in the direction of let's not sell, because I thought that was the honest thing to do, since I saw it as that pendulum, and since it actually works as a pendulum, the more I pushed in the opposite direction, the better I was at selling and getting people to spend money. And it really blew my mind before I understood this as an objective concept, before it was actually put to me in print, that was what I was doing. I didn't understand why I was consistently selling people. But then, once I understood it as an objective concept, it made much more sense once it was conscious, and it was something that it was easier for me to practice. A third example from before I had read that book. I was dealing with a school district a few years ago, back when I had Rossman Supply. This school district gave MacBook Airs to K through 5. Kindergartners had MacBook Airs, and this is back when MacBook Air screens were very, very expensive. So I had a conversation with them. I talked to some of the people responsible for creating the programs for the computer labs there, and every single application that they were using with these kids was cloud-based. So you didn't need a Mac, you didn't need a PC, you didn't need Linux, you needed a working web browser. This was all cloud-based. They were not doing anything that required a specific operating system. So I had a conversation with them because they had a lot of broken ones. They'd asked for something like 300 screens. And at the time, these were very expensive. And I said, I'm more than happy to sell you these 300 screens. But here's the thing. I'm not sure if anybody told you this, but you don't need these machines. So you're going to pay a ridiculous amount of money per screen. You're actually going to pay more per screen to get these fixed than you would if you had something like a Chromebook. A Chromebook is probably going to cost half the amount of money that the screen I'm selling you costs, It's going to be more durable, so it's not going to break when the kindergartner does what a kindergartner does with a computer and breaks it. And and it's in the long term, you're not going to have to worry about repeated damage. So here I'm going to sell you 300 screens. A few months later, since this is a very fragile machine, you're probably going to come back and need another 300 screens. Whereas if you just bite the bullet and let's say get Chromebooks, now you'll spend less money and it'll be a one-time purchase and it'll allow you to do everything that you want to do with what you're teaching. Nothing going on here really requires a MacBook Air. And they go, okay, yeah, I understand what you're saying. Well, we'll just take the 300 screens for now because that's what we need. And I'm like, okay. 2 months later, about 2 months later, we get another call saying, hey, we need about another 300 MacBook Air screens. I'm like, okay. Just so you know, the price has gone up due to market shortages, so this is the price. Again, I would strongly look into the whole Chromebook option. We don't sell them. I can direct you to another vendor. I'm not saying this because I'm trying to make money off of you, but since you're using all cloud-based software, instead of paying this ridiculous rate per screen and having to pay a technician to install it, because the MacBook Air screen is fairly difficult to install compared to that of any other machine, instead of paying all that, you just go with these Chromebooks. They're so much cheaper, and they're not going to break as easy. I'm like, yeah, okay, another 300 MacBook Air screens. Then we get another call a few months later. Hey, we want another 300 MacBook Air screens. And at this point, I actually received an email from one of the people that works for the school district asking about the MacBook Air screens and saying, like, are these more fragile than other laptops or something? Because it seems like we're buying a lot of these from you and we're spending a lot of money on them. And I mean, is there a reason that these are so expensive? And at this point, I just like I just hung up. I'm just like, no. We had this conversation 2 or 3 fucking times where I was explaining how you don't need to spend this money. I did my best to talk you out of spending this money. So don't go backpedaling right now and saying, why are you selling us all the expensive stuff? Do we really need this? But it was that simple, and I really didn't understand what I was doing. I wasn't trying to be manipulative. I wasn't trying to sell, but I kept pushing the pendulum in the other direction. Don't buy this. You don't need this. You can do this cheaper and get the exact same thing done with a different product. And what would happen? Money would just fly in from selling those 300 MacBook Air screens over and over and over again. This is where confidence comes in. The customer needs to perceive that you are confident in the product you're selling. But again, confidence is not going to be expressed via the standard hard sales method of talking about how great your product is. Rather, it's going to be a more logical exploration of how you would act if you had a good product. So let me try and walk you through this. Stick with me here. Let's say that you have the best product in the world. If you have the best product in the world, a lot of people are going to want your product or service, which means that you're going to be very busy trying to offer this product or service to everybody that wants it. If you are very busy offering this product or service to people who want it, because you have a lot of people who want your product or service, what would be a more productive use of your time? Would your time be best spent dealing with a customer who just walked in, who's lukewarm about the product, who's not really sure if they want it or not? Or would your time be best spent dealing with the other 100,000 people that are fighting hand over fist to see who gets your product first? Of course, if your product were good and you had all that business, your time would be best spent dealing with everybody else that really wants and needs that product right now. So if you were in that particular situation, you probably would not go out of your way to fake this over-the-top friendship that doesn't exist with somebody who just walked in the door. Nor would you spend so much time trying to convince the person that it has the best price and the best gas mileage and the best safety ratings, because the time that you're putting into this hard sale for somebody who's not interested could easily be put into providing that product to somebody else who is interested. And if the product were any good, there would be many people who are actually interested in it. So if you show up and it's so obvious that you're trying to push the boulder across the street, what happens in the consumer's mind is they immediately kind of wonder, is there really value to this product? If there was value to this product, wouldn't you be kind of selling them to people? Would you need to explain all of this to me? Wouldn't it just kind of speak for itself? And it kind of makes you wonder, would I get a better price somewhere else? Yeah, I mean, you're trying a little hard there. I think I'm just going to make sure that there's not a better price somewhere else. It erodes trust when a salesperson acts with this hard sales methodology. But when a salesman is calm, collected, suggests that people look elsewhere, what that does in your head, it's like, wow, This product is so good that he knows that if I leave here and I spend 40 minutes going to every other car dealership, that I'm not going to find a better midsize sedan than this one. Damn. And I did kind of come here because they had good ratings. And I do need a car. All right, I'll buy it. That is the power of honesty and the pendulum when dealing with sales. And what you're going to notice is if you're dealing with managers who are used to this hard sales methodology, they're often going to step in front of customers when you start working based on the pendulum methodology. They're going to step in front of you. They're going to interrupt you, and then they're going to start dealing with the customer directly. And the customer that you were just about to sell, once they realize this change to the hard sales methodology from your manager, is going to walk out the door. And in truly bad businesses and sales floors, what's going to happen is that manager is then going to blame you for the customer walking out, not them. And if you're dealing with one of these environments, it's best that you leave as soon as you can to go over to some place that's actually going to allow you to grow. I feel like this instinct dates back a long, long time ago, far before laptops or cars or cell phones or fourth wave feminism roamed the earth. Let's go back hundreds of thousands of years, back to the caveman days. So back in the caveman and the cavewoman days, there was this idea that the woman was going to take care of the household, or in this case, I guess, take care of the cavehold. I don't think they had houses back then, so the woman was going to take care of the cavehold, raise the children, whereas the man was going to go out and hunt and gather water and food and firewood and materials that could be used for blankets and clothing and whatnot. So let's just go back to that old day and see if any of those instincts still hold true today when it comes to sales. Now, there's this idea today of like the alpha male versus the beta male, and the alpha male is going to be the one that's in the pickup artist community, I guess you could say. The alpha male is considered the asshole, the guy that doesn't make time for the woman, whereas the beta guy is the nice guy that makes time for the girl but never gets the girl because he's a nice guy. And there are better written explanations of why this happens in the pickup artist community. Admittedly, there are, but I've always disliked the very, very short approach to this, the very, very shortened, abridged idea that being nice to women gets you nowhere. Be an asshole to them. Treat her like crap and she'll love you. The reason I've never really been a fan of that is because it really doesn't get into or analyze why anything happens the way it does. And if you go back a long, long time ago, I feel like you can get it to make a little bit of sense. So let's say that you're the cave woman and there's somebody that's just sitting with you in the cave and talking with you and texting back and forth with you and like just standing around and laughing at things that are not funny and, open and just listening to everything about you that went on during your day for 4 or 5 hours. And then there's another guy that only comes around for about 15 or 30 minutes at a time. That caveman who's only around for a much shorter amount of time, he takes about 3 or 4 hours to get back to her text message every now and then. Now, he winds up getting the cavewoman. Why does this happen? Why is this the case? Well, let's explore what may be going on in the cavewoman's mind. She knows that when the sun sets, it's going to be about 26 degrees in the cave, and she's kind of hungry. Who is more likely to come back with firewood, food, and a blanket? The guy that spent 5 hours talking in the cave, or the guy that is actually out there hunting, the guy who's actually out there chopping firewood and collecting water in buckets and, carving out a rock to be used as a cup so they could drink water from it or whatever the fuck cavemen did back in those days. The woman is going to wonder, if you had value, why are you here all the time? You cannot have value if you're here all the time, rather than going out into the world and getting the resources that we need so that we don't starve to death or freeze to death when nighttime comes. And if we apply this to sales, it's kind of the same concept, that idea of if your product were so valuable, if you were valuable, you would not have to be here and try to sell me on why you're valuable. The very fact that you have time to spend 40 minutes pretending to be my friend, talking and talking and talking, shows me that that's how you're choosing to spend your 40 minutes, rather than spending your 40 minutes providing the product that you say is so great, or in the caveman's instance, actually going out there and getting the resources that would make you great or make sure that you live through the winter. Now, the guy that's out there gaining resources, getting food, water, firewood, blankets, making a wall out of rocks so that when the lion walks by, he doesn't see the humans in the cave and try to eat them. that he's not being an asshole, he's not being mean, he's not purposely being mean because that's what gets the girl. Rather, his lack of time that he's spending with the cave woman is a byproduct of the fact that he's out there in the world, trying to better his standing in the world, trying to acquire resources and become a better man. One of the things that has always disappointed me with the nice guy rant, or the whole idea that nice guys finish last, you have to be a douchebag, is the complete lack of understanding as to what may make some of those douchey behaviors attractive. It's not that speaking of douchebags, come on, kitty, I'm busy. It's not that the douchey behavior is the primary driver. That's not what the person is intending to do. Rather, the douchey behavior of getting back to the text message a few hours late or not having as much time for the woman is a byproduct of the man working as hard as he can to better himself. So what I find that a lot of people that enter the pickup artist thing do is that they just start acting. They think that the sale is going to be being an asshole. But they totally miss out on the fact that the reason many of the alphas in many cases are assholes is because they're out there working to better themselves. They're building a business. They're trying to. They're touring with their band, or they're busy writing a novel, or they're traveling around the world as an executive trying to do great things with their company. Whatever it is that they're doing, they're working. And then they don't want to be assholes, but it's just a byproduct of trying to gain better standing in the world. I remember an example of this with this woman that I was dating about 4.5 or 5 years ago. I was dating her right at the time that I was moving into this new commercial space. I was moving from this dumpy basement, crappy office that I had into a store. And I was very excited to finally have a store in a decent area where there was a lot of foot traffic, that was on ground level, that was all mine, no subleasing, no renting along with other people, no it's this address but hit this buzzer. No, it was my store with my own door. And even though I didn't have the money at the time to build it out the way I wanted, I was still doing my best with what I had. And the day of the date was actually a date that we were picking up a bunch of sheetrock or drywall. It was like 5 years ago. We were picking up sheetrock, drywall, a bunch of wood, and a bunch of stuff that we were going to need. And we were also starting with the building process. And I was about 15, 20 minutes late to the date. I showed up, I actually ran there directly from this place on either Forsyth or Christie Street. Or Allen Street, I forget. It was either Allen, Forsyth, or Christie. It was this place in the Lower East Side that has all this really great construction materials. It's a Chinese business that has amazing construction materials at a great price. And I had all over my left forearm, I had sheetrock dust, and I was sweating. I looked like shit. And I showed up, and I was expecting nobody to be there. Or if somebody was actually still at the restaurant, I was expecting her to just have this terribly disappointed look on her face and just look at me in this terrible way before just leaving or having a terrible attitude. And I sat down, and I looked at her, and I said, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I'm late. Tell me all about your day. And she looks at me, and she's like, what are you apologizing for? And before I could even answer, she knew what I was going to say, because I'm late, because I look like crap, because I have sheetrock dust all over me at a nice restaurant that I just walked into. This is a pretty nice restaurant, and walking in, dressed the way I was one thing. Walking in with sheetrock covering my left arm was just... I look like a fucking idiot. She's a well-educated woman. She has a good life. She has a good job, and I think she was in her late 20s. I was like 29 or 30. I was 23. And she looks at me, and I'm expecting to get my ass kicked. I'm expecting to get guilted. I'm just waiting for it, and I know that I deserve it, so I'm not even going to be mad. And she looks at me, she puts her hand on mine, and she says, You're building a store and a business for yourself, and you're doing your best to do this all on your own, and you're still taking time to come here and have dinner with me. How could I possibly be mad at you? And she has this big sincere smile on her face. And it was one of those moments where it's like, yes, somebody gets it. It was different than all those people that I had dated at that time that are like, hey, why do you work so much? Why do you work so much? Why do you work so much? Let's go on this expensive vacation, but why do you work so much? Why do you work so much? Let's go to an expensive restaurant. Why do you work so much? Why do you work so much? Why do you work so much? I want to go see that show. Why do you work so much? I want these nice shoes. Why do you work so much? Hey, I want to spend every single last dime that you have while complaining about the means that you use to make it, which is just typical of the people that I had dated in New York. Why do you work so much? I want to spend your money. Why do you work so much? because I want to have money to spend, and I ain't gonna spend it on you. But I digress. There was this realization. So she saw the forest for the trees. She understood that it wasn't that I was trying to be an asshole. It was that my assholeness of showing up to the restaurant, a nice restaurant covered in fucking sheetrock, 15 or 20 minutes late and leaving her sitting there. It wasn't because I wanted to be mean. It wasn't because I didn't care. It was because I was working on myself. I was working on something that would provide for myself now into the future. I was working on something that would allow me to retire in my early 30s. I was working on something that would allow me to teach thousands and thousands and thousands of people how to make a living for themselves via YouTube and classes. I was working on a business that was going to potentially change the law with the right to repair bill and change policies and employ people that I knew and cared about that had crappy minimum wage jobs that could now work for 2 or 4 times that. It was so that I could leave at 1 o'clock in a busy work day and go, I don't feel like working today. I want to go to lunch. It was so that if I wanted to climb mountains in San Diego and stay at a nice hotel and see shows while I'm there rather than work, that I can just fly there and do that on a whim. It was all the work that was put in so that later on I would have all the freedoms afforded to me of financial freedom and security that were not afforded to me when I was completely broke. She saw that. And it wasn't that she was attracted to me for being an asshole. She was attracted to me for everything I was doing with my life that caused me in that short time frame, in that moment, to be an asshole. She didn't see sheetrock. She didn't see a poorly dressed person. I guess I was actually decently dressed, but I was still covered in sheetrock. She didn't see the sheetrock covered person walking into the restaurant late. She saw the person that was building their own life walking into the restaurant and saying, I'm going to take a break from that to come see you. And that was a great moment of what would very shortly then after become a terrible, terrible relationship with long story on that. But still, in the beginning, there was that was there. And I think that a lot of the people that go with this whole nice guys finish last thing, I'm going to be an asshole because I read it in some pickup artist website, they're missing it. They don't understand. They don't get it. It's that when you offer value, you don't have to spend 5 hours being fake nice to somebody when you actually have value to offer. If anything, being all that fake nice, pretending to laugh at jokes that are not funny, spending constant time and giving somebody constant attention reinforces the fact that you're not out there doing something with your life to make yourself better, and it makes that woman that much more skeptical that you have any value to offer at all, which then just further reinforces this because she's not going to like you. I have to spend more time with her. She likes me. You're going to spend more time with her, and she's going to think even more, gee, you have all this time to spend with me. What the fuck are you doing with your life? The truly confident people, the people who have real reason to be confident, not fake confidence, not that hard sales confidence, but true confidence that comes from knowing that what you have to offer is of great value. That type of confidence does not require hard sales. And people pick up on the difference between the fake confidence and the true confidence, and people are very good at sussing out whether there is inherent value in a product, a service, or even a person. It's easy to tell whether or not somebody's doing something with their life or whether they've got no prospects and no motivation. It's easy to tell whether a product or service has people lining up for it because it's good or whether it's a complete pile of shit. This idea of confidence has a lot to do with the pendulum, because the people who are truly 110% confident in what it is they have to offer, they're not going to have to continuously push you towards the sale. They know that they can push you away from the sale. They know that after they push you away from the sale, that you're going to look at every other option and go, actually, my best option's right here, so I'm going to stay here. So if you have a good product, or even if you don't have the best product, getting the customer out of that paranoid mindset that occurs when you are constantly trying to push the boulder down the street rather than simply push the pendulum away from the sale is going to do you so much good. Because you're not going to get the sale when the customer is in that paranoid, is this really a good product? If this product were that good, why are they trying to sell me so hard? And getting them out of that mindset is going to do so much for your ability to sell that product. And also, it's going to do a lot for removing buyer's remorse. Even if you do manage to get the pendulum to stick at sale just long enough to swipe their credit card and have them leave, are they going to leave your product a good review? Are they going to feel good about your product a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now? Are they going to recommend that product to other people if the pendulum swings back towards, I shouldn't have bought this after they bought it? Will the pendulum swing back to, I shouldn't have bought this, while they're still in the chargeback area? A lot of people will be willing to spend money up front on something. You can meet a lot of people that are willing to spend money up front, but they didn't really want the product. They weren't really okay with the risks associated with the service. And a month from now, when one of the risks associated with the service occurs, is that going to be something that you're liable for via chargeback? We do live in a society where people have to type in 3 things on their keyboard or just call a number, and whatever money they spent is magically returned to them. And that's something that people don't think about a lot when they're doing this hard sales all the time. So I hope that this video in some way helped you with realizing. I wish you the best of luck with everything that you try to sell. I wish you the best of luck in your own life dealing with negotiations. And as always, I hope you learned something.